My ex left me broken at the altar, then begged for love 7 years later. So I walked into our meeting hand in hand with my husband and daughter. I, a 36-year-old female, met my ex-fiancé, a 34-year-old male, around 10 years ago on a trip to Los Angeles. We were surprised to find out that both of us lived nearby back home and ended up spending the entire trip together. We started dating when we returned and were together for 3 years before he proposed. My ex-fiancé was an accountant, but he wanted to be a singer. He really did have a nice voice, but in spite of that, he kept getting rejected everywhere because he was a solo act, and his voice alone didn't cut it. He used to have a band in high school, and even through college, they stayed together, but after that they had to break up because life got in the way. I'd feel kind of sad listening to him talk about his passion for music and tried to convince him to talk to his old buddies and do something about it. Anyway, once he proposed, I was really excited to get married and had planned the entire wedding myself. In the days leading up to the wedding, not even once did I think there was anything off about my ex-fiancé's behavior. He seemed exactly as enthusiastic. He left me standing at the altar in the middle of my vows. He excused himself, saying he was feeling dizzy, and I assumed it must have been because of nerves and suggested that he go wash his face. I waited for several minutes, but he didn't return. After around 15 minutes of just standing around and waiting, I accepted that. He was probably not going to come back, and I wasn't getting married that day. I told my bridesmaids to take care of the guests and left to check out his room. The only thing I found there, unfortunately, was a letter addressed to me, which explained that he had contacted his old band buddies around a month ago, and they'd all decided to finally get back together. So he was moving back to his hometown. While he wanted to tell me about it for some time, he never found the courage to do so. He had no other option but to run away, since otherwise it would be too late to chase after his dreams, and he just had to do it. He apologized for abandoning me in the middle of the ceremony, but hoped that I'd understand. After reading that letter, I was shattered and spent the next few days crying myself to sleep every day. I couldn't believe that he'd not even considered me worthy of a breakup in person and had just humiliated me in front of all my friends and family. Not even his groomsman or his best man, his brother, responded to my calls and texts after he left me at the wedding. I guess he explained the situation to them afterward and told them not to talk to me so that I wouldn't be able to contact him or find him again. 1 week later, I decided to forget about him entirely and move on with my life instead of sitting around all depressed. It was difficult, but I knew that I couldn't stay hung up on him forever, and had to live a life for myself as well, just as he was. He hadn't bothered to think about me or my feelings before doing what he had to do, so why should I? I'd sworn to myself, though, that I'd stay away from men and dating forever after that. The hurt and humiliation were incomparable, and just couldn't deal with that sort of heartbreak ever again. But as fate would have it, 2 years after my ex-fiancé left me, I met my husband. I met him through a friend, and while he was instantly smitten with me, his words, not mine, I was skeptical and refused to go on a date with him for at least 3 months. He's such a wonderful and fun person that eventually he wore me down, and I agreed to go out with him, which turned out to be the best decision of my life. We dated for a year, and even though I never even considered getting married after what had happened the first time around, I didn't have to think twice when he asked me to marry him and said yes almost instantly. It didn't feel rushed or wrong at all, and I was really happy that I decided to give love another chance. Now, I've been married for 4 years and have a 3-year-old daughter as well. I'm glad that my ex-fiancé left me 7 years back, because if he hadn't, then I might have never met my amazing husband and had the life I have now. 2 weeks ago, my ex-fiancé tracked me down on Facebook somehow and asked me to meet him. I was shocked that he'd even had the audacity to reach out to me after what he'd done, and blocked him instantly. But he made several other accounts and just kept texting me, apologizing for what he'd done and saying that he wanted to meet me desperately. I hadn't heard from him or about him even once in the past 7 years, and I intended on keeping it that way. But he just wouldn't take the hint and kept messaging me. So I finally responded and told him that while I did forgive him and hardly even cared about him, I didn't want to speak to him or meet him ever again, and he needed to respect that. That was another mistake since, after I responded, he doubled down on his insistence and said that I absolutely must meet him for the sake of closure. He even said that he was aware of the fact that I was married and had a child, but he still thought that I should meet him at least one time since we had such a long history. I was so pissed off that, despite knowing that I had a husband and daughter now, he was still texting me continuously. The last straw was when he sent me a message saying that he wasn't going to take no for an answer and that I owed this to him because we'd been together for so long in the past. That really rubbed me the wrong way, and I decided that I'd had enough. I filled my husband in on the whole thing and said I wanted to teach this guy a lesson for trying to come back into my life and mess things up for me again. He was totally on board with it as well, because the first time I told him about what my ex-fiancé had done, he'd made it very clear that there's nobody he hated more than that guy. So of course, he was totally on my side when it came to doing something petty and mean to get back at my ex. So I responded to my ex-fiancé online and agreed to go out on a date with him. We finally met yesterday, and it was so incredibly satisfying to see his face go from one of happiness to horror when he saw me walk into the restaurant with my husband and daughter in tow. He was silent for a few seconds, but then he got really upset and started screaming at me in front of everyone. He called me all sorts of derogatory names in the book and accused me of being a cheater and a liar. I barely even knew what to say because of how he'd reacted. He was hysterical, and it was quite embarrassing to be part of that scene. Eventually, the restaurant manager had to escort him out while he still kept screaming at me about how awful I was. After that, we were even asked to leave, and we obliged. A day had passed since then, and honestly, I feel a little guilty about what happened. I have no feelings for him anymore, and neither do I think I owe him anything at all. But I also think that bringing my husband and daughter along to meet him might have been going a little too far. I should have just blocked him once again and let things go, but I just had to take revenge on him. I feel really petty, and after discussing it with my husband, both of us think that what we did might not have been the best decision. I don't know if I should apologize to him or not, though, because none of this would have happened if he just left me alone. I don't know what to do. Am I the asshole for agreeing to meet my ex-fiancé and then taking my husband and daughter with me? Update 1, so I didn't apologize to him. I don't think it was my fault, and what I did might have been petty, but well, what he'd done in the past was humiliating. And the way he'd been insisting that I go out with him in spite of knowing that I was married now was disgusting. So, he deserved whatever came his way. I don't even know why he accused me of being a cheater. A liar? Yeah, maybe. If I think about all of this from his perspective, then I guess I did lie to him in a way. I did agree to meet him, but I never said that I'd come by myself, so I just didn't tell him the full truth. But I definitely didn't cheat him out of anything at all, so that was a pretty ridiculous accusation to make. After reading the responses here, my husband and I realized that we were just feeling guilty. For no reason, because what we did was a mild response to what he'd been trying to do. He hasn't contacted me since then, and I'm hoping he keeps it that way now. Update 2, 3 days ago, I met my ex-fiancé, and today he visited me at my home. I don't know how he tracked me down, but I was taken aback to see him. My husband and daughter were out shopping for her, but I stayed home because I had to work. I was really nervous to even let him in, so I told him that whatever he wanted to talk about had to be discussed on the doorstep because I didn't trust him enough to let him in. He seemed ashamed of himself, but agreed to remain outside. He started off by apologizing to me for trying to get with me despite knowing that I was married and had a daughter, and said that he totally deserved what I had done. He also apologized for abandoning me at the altar all those years ago and said that he just hoped to reconnect since he still wanted me back and hadn't been able to forget me and move on yet. He confessed that he still thought he could win me back, but when he saw me with my husband and daughter, he realized that he'd lost his chance and was here to just apologize, nothing else. I didn't say much since I was just really confused about what to say to him at this point. Anyway, after he was done apologizing for his behavior, he asked me if he could visit me later and talk to my husband and apologize to him as well. I told him that I'd ask my husband and let him know if he was okay with it, but I couldn't say yes myself anyway. That was what happened, and I'm still kind of lost. I guess I'll just have to talk to my husband when he comes back home and think about what to do next. Update 3, it was a bad idea for me to even speak to him earlier today. I don't know how, but he got hold of my husband's phone number, and, I guess, he had someone taking pictures of us while we were talking because my husband just came back home an hour ago and showed me texts from an unknown number, which accused me of cheating on him with my ex-fiancé. I'm pretty sure that this is his low and disgusting attempt at trying to turn my husband against me so that he can win me back or whatever, because clearly I'm not going to leave my family. What he doesn't know is that my husband is just as loyal to me as I am to him, and unfortunately, for him, we don't believe in the flimsy ideas of love that he seems to have. I'm glad that I didn't invite him in because that probably might have looked even worse. Even in the pictures, I'm smiling because they've been photoshopped to make me look warm and welcoming. Instead, my husband told me about the text as soon as he came back home, and he suspected that this must have been my ex-fiancé trying something funny again. I couldn't even believe that he could stoop so low. He'd been the one who had ditched me on my wedding day all those years ago. And now he expects me to just get back with him, no questions asked. That's just ridiculous. Anyway, my husband and I talked about it, and I even told him that. He'd asked to meet him afterwards so that he could apologize to him. Now I know that all of that was fake, just so that he could drag out this conversation with me, and his creep friend could get more photographs of me. My husband also reminded me that not only was this a cruel trick to play to turn him against me, but it was also an invasion of my privacy, and I had genuinely forgotten about that bit until my husband reminded me. It was honestly disgusting and creepy, the way he turned into a total stalker now. So we decided that this must end because he's acting like a total stalker. I don't even know how he found where I live, or how he got my husband's phone number because, honestly, up until right now, I hadn't bothered to find out anything about him. He was a really old and irrelevant part of my life, and I'd practically erased him from my memories after I got married. But I guess now I'll have to do some digging and find out more about him. I feel unsafe in my own house right now, but thankfully my husband's presence made me feel a lot better. I want to go to the cops, but I don't even know if that's the right move since I don't know anything about my ex anymore. Update 4. Well, I did a little digging, and I think it's safe to say that my ex is not the powerful, influential public figure I thought he was, which had scared me into staying quiet and not reporting him to the cops. It turns out that after he ditched me at the altar and ran off with his friends to form a band, he hadn't found the kind of success he'd hoped for. He and his bandmates were mediocre at best, but still, I guess where he came from they were considered good and had a very niche following. He'd probably enlisted his friends' help in tracking me down, and it must have been easy for him because one of them used to work in cybersecurity. It was scary for me to think that they'd use their experience for something so pointless and be completely okay with it as well. But I guess that's how they are, unethical losers. Now that I know he has a niche following and isn't immune to the law, like I'd thought he was, my first thought was to go to the cops. But my husband had a better idea. He believes that since they have no shame in trying to trick us into turning on one another, then we should probably have a bit of fun with them as well and expose their disgusting and creepy behavior to their fans back home. That'll definitely teach them a lesson, and I'm totally on board with it as well. It took us a while to think of something, but we did come up with a plan. Again, it's petty and mean like the last time, but truth be told, he deserves it. He's been harassing me and my husband, and if anything, this definitely will put an end to his desperation. If he truly ever had loved me in the past, then he would have respected my decision to move on, but he's clearly unable to do that. So I guess I need to make it even more crystal clear to him. Update 5. 3 days since the last update, and I'm so happy to tell you guys that my plan worked. 2 days back, I invited my ex over for dinner at my house and made it seem like my husband and I had gotten into a huge fight. He probably thought that the text he'd sent had succeeded in making him think that I cheated on him, and he was fully convinced that this was his chance to get me back. Little did he know that my husband and I were working together and were about to let all his friends, family, and fans know what a creepy little loser he was. My husband and I had placed multiple cameras around the living room and started live streaming our entire interaction on his band's Facebook page the second he stepped into the house. It took a lot of work to make this plan work, honestly, and I don't think we could have done it without my brother's help. He's a computer genius and can hack into almost anything, so a Facebook page wasn't a huge challenge for him. Anyway, as for the cameras, we spent a considerable amount of money on them, but thinking about how it would help us expose my ex made me think that it would be all worth it in the end. And honestly, it was. I don't regret anything in the slightest. So anyway, we got to talking, and he seemed really impressed with himself as well because he'd finally succeeded in winning my trust back. He polished off around 3 glasses of wine, and after that, making him confess to how he tried to convince my husband that I cheated was a piece of cake. He started boasting about how my idiotic husband didn't even question the pictures and believed that I'd gotten back together with my ex, and told me about how his bandmates had been helping him all along as well. After he was done telling me about all of it, I informed him that whatever he'd said up until this point had been live streaming on his band's page, and even if people weren't watching, we'd make sure that everyone knew about it eventually. I let him know that he was a disgusting human being, and that he needed to get the hell out of my house right away. He was obviously pretty taken aback when I told him all of that, and it took him a few seconds to compose himself as well, since he was pretty buzzed by that point. But as soon as he realized what I was saying, he decided to launch himself at me, probably in an attempt to hurt me, but my husband intervened, and thankfully, I came out unscathed. They had a bit of a scuffle, but I'd already called the police, and after a few minutes they showed up at our doorstep and arrested him. All of this obviously had been live-streamed to their audience, and several people did see it. He and his band were canceled, so to speak, almost overnight, and it even made the local news because of how insane the incident was. I've had people contact me and tell me how brave I was for exposing him, since not only did he come off as unhinged, but also creepy. All the female fans he had back home disappeared, and his bandmates even issued a statement saying that they weren't involved in anything that my ex had done and weren't associated with him anymore, just to cover for themselves. I, for one, am glad that I did what I did. And so is my husband. We're really pleased with ourselves because our plan worked, and since we've pressed charges against him as well, we're hoping that he'll end up behind bars for at least a month. Update 6. My ex-fiancé ended up with a 3-month sentence for stalking, harassing, and attempting to assault me, and we're really happy that we had all of it on video as evidence. Some people have said that what I did was messed up and straight up cruel, but, well, they're not the ones who had their heart broken on their wedding day because their good-for-nothing fiancé decided to leave them at the altar. I think whatever I did was perfectly within reason. His family is obviously blaming me for what happened and trying to paint me as the bad guy, posting about how their son was innocent because it was me who had turned his head. I mean, I didn't expect much from the people who supported their son when he left me on my wedding day, but this was just low. They've been trying to convince people that I had every intention of cheating on my husband with my ex and was just trying to play the good girl for fame. Their band wasn't even that popular, so I don't know what they were going on about. The final nail in the coffin was when his mother posted about how I had no strength of character since I'd moved on within 2 years after her son left me, and a woman like me did not deserve to be trusted. I told his mother that if she didn't stop posting about me, then I'd expose her son's sleazy text to me as well, and then her reputation would be even worse than it is now. That got her to shut up, even though she's still pretty hell-bent on the fact that her son is innocent. And I'm the bad guy here who influenced him by dropping hints and pretending to love him. I know for a fact that even though she stopped posting about me online, she's still very actively trying to fuel a hate campaign against me and has even started a petition to free her son. I don't know why she's so convinced that her son is innocent, but whatever. I'm done with her and my ex now and just want to focus on my own life. My husband and I have had enough drama for a lifetime, very honestly. I've lost a few friends because of what happened since they believe that I went too far, and maybe I did. I don't know, but then again, they don't know what I've been through. While my actions may seem extreme to a lot of people, I think what I did was all right given the circumstances. He had not only ruined my life once, but had even tried to come back and ruin my marriage in spite of knowing that I was content with my life now. So there's literally no redeeming factor and no reason as to why I should have been forgiving. I'm glad I was petty and cruel. He deserved it. But whatever, my husband and I are now free from him, and hopefully he's learned his lesson and will stay away from us forever now. Looking back on everything that's happened, I feel like I've been on an emotional roller coaster that's finally slowing down. The past 7 years have been a whirlwind of heartbreak, healing, and hard-won happiness. When my ex-fiancé left me at the altar, it felt like my world had shattered into pieces too small to ever put back together. The humiliation of standing there, in front of everyone I loved, waiting for someone who was never coming back, carved a wound so deep I thought I'd never recover. I cried myself to sleep for days, grappling with the betrayal and the audacity of someone who couldn't even face me to end things. It wasn't just the loss of a relationship, it was the loss of trust, of dreams, of the future I'd so carefully planned. But as time passed, I realized that his abandonment was a painful gift. It forced me to rebuild myself, to find strength I didn't know I had. Deciding to move on wasn't easy. It was a deliberate choice to prioritize my own life over the shadow he'd left behind. Meeting my husband was like finding sunlight after years of storms. His patience, his humor, his unwavering love, they showed me that I could trust again, that I could love without fear. Marrying him and welcoming our daughter into the world filled my heart in ways I never thought possible. They are my anchors, my joy, and the reason I can look back at that altar moment and feel gratitude instead of pain. When my ex reappeared, it was like a ghost from the past trying to haunt my present. His persistence, his refusal to respect my boundaries, stirred up old anger and new fears. I felt violated, as if he thought he could waltz back into my life and disrupt the peace I'd fought so hard for. The decision to confront him, to show up with my husband and daughter, was born out of that anger, a need to reclaim my power and show him that I'd moved on. Looking back, I question if I went too far, if my pettiness overshadowed my better judgment. But I also know that his actions, stalking, manipulating, trying to sabotage my marriage, justified my resolve to protect my family. Now, with him behind bars and his schemes exposed, I feel a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. I'm relieved that he's out of my life, hopefully for good, and that my husband and I stood united against his chaos. But I'm tired of the drama, the fear, the need to constantly defend my peace. I've lost friends who judged my actions, and that stings, but I've also gained clarity about who truly matters. My husband, my daughter, and the life we've built are worth every fight. I'm ready to close this chapter, to let go of the anger and focus on the love that surrounds me. I've learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward stronger and wiser every single day.